Welcome back to the PreSnap Podcast presented by LineStar, your guide to best ball. Tyler, I can't believe it, but we are 20 days away from preseason football. It is crazy to believe that the season is fast approaching, and we are right in the thick of best ball season on Underdog Fantasy. So if everyone hasn't already downloaded Underdog Fantasy and taken part in these best ball drafts, it's all the fun of season-long fantasy football, but without having to change your roster week in and week out. It's so much fun. Highly recommend it. And today's show is dedicated to best ball. We're talking about some buyer beware players. This can apply both to best ball and your season-long fantasy, but for our purposes, we're really focusing in on the ADP of best ball on those Underdog Fantasy drafts. Now, how would you characterize what we mean by buyer beware?
I would say more so that the projections and the rankings are fragile at their current ADPs. There's just big time variance with where they're being drafted. So we're not necessarily saying, hey, fade these guys. We are more so giving reasons why you may want to think about drafting them before you actually draft them.
Right. Just, approach with caution, guys with some high upside. However, there are some concerns that we feel the need to bring to your attention as your trusty guides here on the LineStar YouTube channel. Speaking of which, if you can do us a huge favor before we get into it, and we've got a lot of controversial players, I think, and so I'm excited to talk about them. But before we do us a favor, like this video, subscribe to the channel, comment below, let us know where you're at in all of your best ball drafting, what your strategies are, what players you're going after. We want to hear from you guys in the comments. So drop a comment below. Also, some exciting news from LineStar. We are coming out with best ball tools and rankings for you as we get closer to the start of football season. So a great tool that will help you dominate in best ball, whether you're playing in the various drafts on Underdog Fantasy or all the different contests across the board, because they are popping up everywhere, Tyler. And I know you've been taking part in a lot of them so far this season. How is your best ball drafting going so far?
Best ball summer is going well. We're in the thick of it now. I said, months ago when we started doing some shows here that July and August were the prime times, and we are now almost in mid-July, so we are absolutely prime time here.
Yeah, right in the thick of it. And make sure if you haven't downloaded Underdog Fantasy, use the promo code LineStar when you first download it so you can get a nice deposit match up to $250. Plus, you'll also get one free month of LineStar. So it's a great way to test out the LineStar app before you fully commit to being a subscriber. But being a subscriber to the LineStar channel has a lot of perks these days, especially when we've got new tools rolling out like our best ball one. So looking forward to rolling that out in the next coming weeks here. Stay tuned to the LineStar YouTube channel. So let's get into our 5 buyer beware players. And we're going to start things off with quite the bang here. I think people might think this will be a little controversial, which is what I'm going for today. We're trying to bring you guys all of the stats before you make decisions in best ball drafting. And yes, we are talking about Justin Jefferson. Dare I say, beware with Justin Jefferson at his current ADP, 5.5 wide receiver, 4 off the board. Now, we're not saying Justin Jefferson's not the amazing talent that he is, but you might want to use caution. We're talking about, yes, a great receiver, but going to be paired with either Sam Darnold, likely week 1, or a rookie quarterback. And so there's a lot of, volatility that comes with that. What are your initial thoughts talking about Justin Jefferson and where he's currently going in best ball drafts, which is pretty high?
I mean, yeah, the talent is absolutely undeniable. The guy is absolutely insane. He still averaged 12.2 points per game without Kirk Cousins last year. Those games that he played at the end of the season there. But the thing with those games is they were either booms or complete total duds. So you're talking 20 plus points or like 5.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing we have to realize what is going to happen with him next year with these QBs getting a huge downgrade. And we really got to be a little wary of it. Is he going to be that guy still, or could we see a little regression? One of the things going in his favor is that Hawkinson is going to be out. So with that, those targets should still be there, even if it is a little less volume and not as quality of targets.
Right. This Vikings offense is still a very pass heavy offense, even though Kirk Cousins no longer the signal caller there. However, I did come across some stats today that I just wanted to bring to everyone's attention. This comes from Pete Overzet, who said since 2018, first round rookie quarterbacks who weren't the top pick in the draft. Remember, J.J. McCarthy went 10th. They've averaged 196 passing yards. Also, Sam Darnold never went over 212 per game in seasons where he had at least 12 starts. And when you look at the numbers here, only 5% of wide receivers on offenses that are going to be where the Vikings are projected to be this season. Of course, anything can happen, but right around 219 is their yards per game projection. And only 5% have posted wide receiver one finishes since 2011. And also since 2011, wide receiver ones who faced a 30 to 50 yards per game decline have dropped about 3.5 PPR points per game. In fact, only 2 didn't decline. So what we're looking at is likely a decline in yards per game, which could lead to, of course, that'll affect the wide receivers. Now we're talking about a pretty exceptional one in Justin Jefferson, who is still going to be out there making crazy catches and doing the gritty all over the field. But at that spot, maybe it'll be interesting to see. It depends on your draft, what receivers are still on the board that you might wind up taking. What is your thoughts on that, where he's kind of going right now? So
personally, I would
here.
Yeah, I would rather have Amon-Ra St. Brown over Jamar Chase, who Amon-Ra is, coming off 5th off the board. And then, I mean, I haven't done much of it, but I would consider taking one of the running backs in Bijan or Breece over Justin Jefferson. I just think it's a little bit safer. And with that number one pick, I don't really want to be hitting Justin Jefferson, although I absolutely am a little bit. I'm, making sure I have some hedges there, but he's not going to be the wide receiver one, and I think that's kind of what you're trying to draft at this point is, in the draft, you are trying to get the guy that could be the first overall next year. And with this quarterback situation, I just don't think that's going to be him.
All right, so let us know what you think of that pick in our comments below. Let us know. We want to hear from you guys. Also, the next one is quite the doozy as well. Devon Achane, buyer beware for the Miami Dolphins running back who had some pretty amazing performances for fantasy purposes last year. The thing was, though, he was a little streaky. Awesome in 5 of 11 games as a rookie. He had at least 21 PPR points in each, but those 5 came in lopsided blowouts. And another stat that I came across was he played 50% or more snaps in 4 games. So what I guess the biggest question mark here, he's going right now RB7 off the board, ADP 24.9. So I feel like there's too much volatility to pick him where he's currently going. What's your take?
Look, the upside of him is so high that I think he's going appropriately. He is a guy that can win you a week almost on his own, but look, he had 4 games of 20 plus fantasy points last year. 2 of them there was one that was like 11 touches and another it was 12. Like, that kind of efficiency is just unheard of. And that brings up a problem with projecting him and where does he fall in all these rankings, because you just can't project a guy with that level of efficiency over and over and over again, especially when we have such a small sample size of what he has done so far. So I think there's a problem in projecting him with that. If you really want to give him that type of efficiency, then he's a great pick. But, if that efficiency level falls off a little bit and he's still not getting like the true RB, workhorse type carries, then his stock is just going to plummet because he's just not getting enough opportunity. And opportunity is generally what is king at the running back position. It's those guys that are getting the most touches scores the most fantasy points. And last year, he was just hitting home run after home run.
I know.
And that's something that is incredibly difficult to do at this level of football.
Yeah, that Miami Dolphins offense was very hard to project from when we were picking prop bets week in and week out. We just didn't know. It was almost similar to like the San Francisco 49ers offense. You just didn't know which weapon they were going to, pull the trigger on week in and week out. Now, it's interesting where he's going in the draft. He's going behind Saquon Barkley. So it kind of like makes sense where he's going in the draft. He's going ahead of Kyren Williams and Derrick Henry. So it does make sense where he's going. I personally like a little Kyren Williams after last season. However, it does make sense.
I'm scared picking the number or picking the name at his ADP. There's huge volatility, but I gotta have some just because like if he has one of those 30-point games in week 17, you're probably gonna need him.
That's for sure, especially on that offense. All right, next up, let's go to another pretty good offense, the Baltimore Ravens offense and Zay Flowers. Now, this is another situation of buyer beware because we've got a lot of variables at play. Right now, Flowers, ADP 36.2, wide receiver 26 off the board. The thing is here, though, is he had some great performances, an unbelievable rookie season. However, this offense has new pieces to it. Derrick Henry joins the fold, and Mark Andrews is back healthy, which impacts his fantasy production. What do you make of his prognosis for the 2024 season?
My opinion is that it is either going to be Mark Andrews or Zay Flowers that pay off their ADP. I don't think both of them can. The reason being, I don't know if Lamar's passing can really carry two high-end weapons like this. You're talking about a guy that had less passing yards than Sam Howell, Derek Carr, Matt Stafford in only 15 games, Baker Mayfield. Geno Smith had 50 less yards in one less game played than Lamar.
Wow.
And, while he is a great quarterback, he just doesn't, his pass volume is so far down below some of these high caliber offenses that it's very, very hard to see two guys go off in this lineup that are pass catchers.
Yeah, when you look at, you mentioned Mark Andrews, maybe him popping off. Last season, Flowers averaged 14.6 points per game without Mark Andrews, but only 8 when he was in the lineup. So you really start to see that dip with a healthy Mark Andrews back in the fold, a great option for Lamar Jackson there. So Zay Flowers, where he's currently going, and while he could have a breakout season for sure, it's hard to really predict. And where he's going as high as he is, I feel like you want someone with a little more certainty when you're picking that high. What do you think?
I agree. And the other thing that we haven't even talked about is this team could be more run heavy than what we've seen because of Derrick Henry and, just the touches that he commands being such a force.
Yeah, and I should bring up a stat that I pulled was in 8 games when a Ravens running back had 13 or more PPR points last year, Flowers exceeded 14 just twice. And one of them was when Justin Hill caught a touchdown. The other 9 games, a Ravens running back didn't get 13 plus PPR points. Flowers scored 14 or more. So it was very dependent on what the run game situation was. And now you're bringing in Derrick Henry, not to just sit around and just sit there. I think he's going to run the ball a lot, especially Todd Monken, when you look at his offenses in the past and how they've worked. It could be to the detriment of the fantasy points for Zay Flowers. So I like our we're not saying totally bail on Flowers, I think is what I'm getting at. But just proceed with caution.
Yeah, I think that I'm just not trying to get both of those guys on the same team. Being Andrews or Flowers. It is one or the other for me.
Yeah.
And I think Flowers ADP is a little more surprising to me than what Andrews is. And thus we're talking about Flowers instead of Andrews.
Yeah, I mean, when you're talking about tight ends, Andrews is pretty trusty, reliable guy, especially he's He's going to be good this year. When fully healthy, you can always expect him to put up some fantasy points. All right, we're going to another tight end, and this one I know is going to be a little controversial. Travis Kelce, is he currently going a little bit too high in his Underdog Fantasy ADP at 39.1 right now? He's coming off the board as tight end 2. Now, last year was the first year since 2015 that Kelce fell below 1,000 receiving yards. He was still pretty dominant, though, 14.8 points PPR points per game, but that was his fewest since 2016. His touchdown rate also 5.4. That was well below his career 8.5 rate heading into the season. And granted, he was injured last year, dealt with some injuries, and then kind of went on a rampage in the postseason, which is kind of, I guess, another point here is that I could see the Chiefs kind of play things conservatively in the regular season. If he's even the least bit hobbling out there, they're going to make sure that he is healthy and ready to go for the playoffs, which is what we've seen kind of year in and year out with the Kansas City Chiefs. He's always a reliable option, but now you've also got some other receiving options coming in and competing for targets in the Kansas City Chiefs receiving room. What do you see here?
Yeah, I mean, he is 34 years old, playing a very physical position. We see guys decline fairly quickly at this position, and I mean, he did great in the playoffs this year, but there's really no reason for the Chiefs to run him out there, 90% of the snaps. They have way more weapons this year, and there's definitely some volatility with him being drafted where he is. I mean, he's 34. He's past the cliff for, most tight ends already, but he's still doing it very well. Now, to counteract, the fade talk, his touchdown rate was really low last year. That pops up again, and he's still one of the best tight ends of the league. So I think there's a lot of different ways you can look at this, but I think you do need to be careful because there is a decent chance that KC pulls the reins in on him a little bit to try and kind of get him ready for the playoffs and make sure he's healthy there when they really need him.
I mean, not even a fantasy perspective, but he's been putting on a show this offseason. Tyler, I don't know if you've seen him on the Eras Tour, but he's been performing with his girlfriend Taylor Swift and putting on a show there. So while he may put on a show for fantasy this year, we're just saying, hey, pump the brakes a little bit. Let's take other factors into consideration. Other factors being Xavier Worthy now in the fold, Marquise Brown now in the fold for the Chiefs. So maybe, I don't know if I would take him where he is currently going in his ADP. That's all I'm saying. Don't come after me, though. I still like Travis Kelce, especially from a week-to-week prop perspective. He's always cashing those tickets for me.
Another thing that we haven't talked about is there's extra volatility in a projection and a ranking of him right now because the Rashee Rice thing is so up in the air.
That's another good point.
Rashee Rice was their top wide receiver. He will be their top wide receiver if he's playing next year, and him in or out of the lineup makes a big difference to this, fantasy outlook for Kelce.
All right, so let's wrap up our top 5 buyer beware players. We're going to wrap it up with Jameson Williams. Detroit Lions receiving core is an interesting proposition to approach from a fantasy perspective. Tyler, how do you evaluate where Williams is currently going at ADP 84.5, wide receiver 48 off the board?
It's interesting. The Detroit Lions offense projects at, one of the highest scoring offenses in the league. They have the most games of like 44 plus game totals of anybody else in the league. So you definitely want parts of this Detroit Lions offense. However, they are all very pricey with the exception of Jameson Williams and Montgomery. Now with Jameson Williams, you're talking about a guy that was a prospect coming out of college that, has giant upside. But so far, we just haven't seen it as a pro. We've seen little flashes, but he only averaged 4.7 points per game last season. He played 12 games. He only had 2 games over 2 catches. You're just not going to pay off wide receiver 48 off 2 catches a game. Mm-hmm. And I know they did lose Josh Reynolds, but you also have two rookies that were very good in Laporta and Gibbs that both could take a step up and demand more targets. And all that is being said with the fact that Amon-Ra St. Brown, I don't know if you've seen the reports this week.
Oh, yeah.
But his injury that he had last year was super significant. He had the muscle was ripped off the bone, played through it, and still commanded an insane amount of targets and 1,500 plus yards. So I think there's still a lot of competition, even though Josh Reynolds is gone.
Right. So then you'd be potentially looking at a scenario where he'd be third in behind Laporta and Amon-Ra St. Brown in targets. Where would you even be getting the value there? That's kind of the question, I guess, that remains.
Yeah, I mean, at least there's upside because he is a deep threat. He has a very deep ADOT. He can, do a lot of things with the ball in his hand, but you're giving up a lot for, him at 84.
Yeah, to your point, air yards per target, 15.8, kind of blew away his other teammates. Josh Reynolds was second at 10.1. Amon-Ra was 7.8. But talent's there, but it's a risky one. Buyer beware. That's why this is the name of the segment. So let us know what you think of all of our picks and analysis on today's show. If you have any questions about any best ball players or what we think about some of them in the rankings that are going to be coming out on LineStar, make sure to drop them in the comments, and good luck in all of your best ball drafts. If there's any other videos that you'd like to see ahead of football season, please let us know in the comments. We're here to help you out. And make sure to stay tuned to the LineStar YouTube channel. We'll have tons of content coming your way. And if you haven't checked out our other best ball videos, I highly recommend you do that. I'll link them below. Good luck in all of your drafting. NFL season is approaching. We'll see you guys next time.
Bye, guys. Good luck.